Tips from Trestle is brought to you by Wiseox AI, the Dining with Dementia Workshop, and the 100% Leader. Welcome to Tips from Trestle, the Senior Living Food and Hospitality Podcast. This podcast explores the senior living industry with a unique focus on food, hospitality, and the community experience. I'm your host, Aaron Fish. My goal for this podcast, bringing the resident and customer experience to the front of mind in our industry. We should bring the passionate spirit of food and hospitality to everything that we do and everyone we serve each and every day. So what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. This week's episode of Tips from Trestle is a conversation that I had at the March Eaton Alternative Conference, and I'm excited to bring it to you. I'm speaking with Deborah Rothschild. She's the founder of ToughAgers LLC and creator of Debra Does Fitness, and she spent over 20 years helping people with dementia build strength, balance, and independence. She had a session at the conference called Dementia and Fitness, Preventing Falls, Enhancing Independence. And what she shared about the research behind fall prevention and why resistance training is the piece most communities are missing stuck with me. So let's get into this conversation with Deborah Rothschild. Deborah, thanks for joining me today on Tips from Trestle.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
I look forward to our conversation. So we're here at the Eden Alternative International Conference, and you presented yesterday. Your session was called Dementia and Fitness, Preventing Falls, Enhancing Independence. And so I wanted to get into that because I think the falls are definitely something operators are concerned about, especially in memory care, where sometimes communication is an issue, not being able to talk to residents and figure out what's going on as easily. And so let's just jump right in. And so when you think about current research, what does it say about the relationship between physical exercise, cognitive health, especially with people living with dementia? And why is all of that so important in a senior living or a healthcare setting?
First, I think we need to look at why people fall, and there's lots of contributing factors. And one of them is the environment. So that's definitely something that can be looked at as far as removing clutter, slippery rugs, wet surfaces, that type of thing. Also, not good lighting is very challenging. Often when I go to work with my clients with in memory care, and the first thing I do, I go into their room and the lights are off. So I just turn those lights on and we get going. So those are things to think about in that sense. The other things to look at are medications, because a lot of people, older adults in general, but especially people dealing with cognitive issues, are on various different medications. And we know that some medications like sedatives and antidepressants do cause dizziness. Other medications might not cause dizziness by themselves. However, if they're also taking another medication, the combination of the medications can cause dizziness. Medication reviews are definitely really key. As we all get older, we lose muscle mass, right? So that's the sarcopenia. And I think that's a very well-known fact. And the more we are sedentary, the more rapid the sarcopenia is. So other things that naturally happen to all of us as we age is our neuromotor performance decline. So basically that means the message from the brain to the muscle slows down. Hence, lack of coordination, a lack of speed and agility. So I'm falling, I need to react quickly. But because I've been sedentary for 30 years, my body doesn't know how to do that anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a lot to stack on top of things, right? Just in thinking about from an operator's perspective, not only do I have to worry about all of that, but I'm also worried about helping them with their ADLs and helping them make sure they get good nutrition. So it's a lot to think about and process. One of the things that I believe you talked about in your session was different types of memory are affected in different ways. It's dementia. And so How does understanding the differences and the distinctions actually change the way you design a fitness or an exercise session?
That's a great question. We have different memory systems. And the first one I'd like to talk about is the sensorial memory. So that's anything that we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, right? It's all through our senses. And that's a snapshot. So it's less than a second. And what makes a sensorial image or feeling go on to the short term memory is attention. From a fitness perspective, I need to gain their attention. So whether it's I say their name, I'm standing in front of them, I have a sign in front of them with the words big enough for them to read it. This is the exercise, pointing
Yeah.
to the exercise, tapping their arm when I want them to move that arm. So I need to gain that attention. And then it moves into their short-term memory. So short-term memory is short, right?
Right.
But it's very short in people with dementia. So I think about that as like a whiteboard. Someone's writing on a whiteboard for us to take notes, but
Yeah.
by the time we write it down, it's now gone. So it's shorter with somebody with mild cognitive impairment or dementia. So what does that mean to a fitness professional in a fitness setting? I need to give them one short cue. Wait till they do that, lift your arm, and then the next cue. Or I can do one or two short cues.
Okay.
Again, I'm saying it, I'm doing it with them. So they're hearing it, they're seeing it, short cues.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I need to tap into their long term memory, which stays with them longer, typically in dementia. But in order to do that, I need to know a lot about the person.
Yeah.
So I need to know their life story. So when I'm speaking in front of fitness professionals, I explain what life story is, because when I interviewed care managers, that's where I learned there's a life story and I can. And so if I have that filled out before my first session, I know a lot about this person.
Yeah.
For example, I was trying to explain to one of my clients who's in his 90s, I wanted him to tap one leg out to the side and he wasn't getting it. So I said, I knew he'd been in the military. So I said, it's like a jumping jack leg. And you better believe his leg went out.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, do that, right? They do that in the military.
Exactly.
But I only could say that and tap into his long-term memory because I knew about him.
Yeah.
And then the key for fitness professionals or in any type of care setting where someone's trying to help somebody through an exercise program is tapping into their procedural memory.
Okay.
So these are things that the body does automatically: riding a bike, tying a shoe, driving. At
Yeah.
first it's hard to learn, but once we do it, we don't have to think about it. The body just
Yeah.
knows what to do.
Like that muscle memory. Yeah.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. So what we can do in a fitness setting is we set up procedures. So this is how I teach my 90-year-olds how to get onto and off of the floor. I break it down. We do it slowly. I wait till they succeed on one move. And then the next time I see them, I'll add another move and we create a pattern. It has to become muscle memory.
Yeah.
And then once I've created the workout, I do the same things in the same order. So
Yeah.
it's not the type of client. Other fitness professionals who work with young athletes. They want a new workout every time, make it exciting. This is not the clientele to do that with. It's
Yeah.
the same thing because they don't necessarily remember. My clients, even though I've done this exercise with them 100 times, they're still looking at me for the next cue, but their body knows how to do it. And if you'd like, I can give an example of that. Again, my gentleman in his 90s, we do a whole workout where I have him get onto the floor, off of the floor. We do ankle weight exercises. And when he's done with that, he knows he needs to look for his walker because it's time to go to the wall for his wall push-up. And there was one day I went, and before I had to even say the next cue, he was looking for the walker because he knew it's time for a wall push-up. He
Yeah.
just seemed like
You just
he was with
have
me
it.
that day.
Yeah.
And as I was saying goodbye to him, I always say, so great to work with you. Today is Wednesday at 3:30. I'll see you Friday at 3:30.
Yeah.
And he says, thank you so much. And he said, can I ask you a question? And I said, oh, absolutely. He said, have you seen my wife? And no, I'm so sorry. I never even met his wife. He
Right.
would say, then he went on to say, she was just here this morning. course, she had past years
Right.
prior.
Yeah.
That really brought it home for me because I was tapping into that procedural memory for about 40 minutes of
Yeah.
that session, but this came from a different part of his brain.
Yeah.
That's why it's really important to keep that routine.
Yeah. One of the things you said in there that I've never heard was that whiteboard analogy. It's such an easy way to understand the short-term memory piece we're talking about because I've always tried to I've been doing this for a long time, but trying to wrap my head around like, how do I describe that? How does that explain between to a chef or to an activity director who's trying to do something? It's such a clear, yeah, like you're right on a whiteboard and it's almost like somebody's going behind you and keeping that clear. And so all of those steps are so important, but that really stood out to me. And obviously one of the reasons that exercise and fitness is so important is fall prevention. That is such a huge thing in communities that leaders are dealing with every day, trying to avoid, trying to reduce. And I'd love for you to walk us through maybe some specific physical factors that can make somebody with dementia more vulnerable to falls and maybe some exercises you've used to target those for success.
So I'd like to go back to the research that you asked about in the first question, because there's a couple of research studies that I think are really key. And one of them is they did a research study on 109 people with dementia, older adults, average age was about 85. And they wanted to know the difference between resistance training and aerobic training versus aerobic training alone versus social visits. That's what they
Okay.
compared. So those were their three groups. And the resistance training and the aerobic training group, they did leg exercises. So simple leg exercises, seated knee extension, toe raises, hip abduction, and hip extension. And what they did is they progressed it with ankle weights and the toe raises just with repetitions. And then the aerobics for them was walking, which is very typical for older adults. And so they increased the difficulty by a duration, how long they
Yeah.
went. And then they had the aerobic. So that was 4 days a week. So they were 30-minute sessions. They had 2 strength training sessions per week and 2 aerobic training sessions per week. And then you had the aerobic alone group that just did the 4 aerobic sessions per week, and then the social visits. So there were 4 30-minute social visits. And they did tests for cognitive and physical. And they did it for 9 weeks. So there were 36 sessions. So they measured before it started, at the end of the 36 sessions. Then they went away and then they came back 9 weeks later and tested
Okay.
everything again.
Were they still doing the exercises that second 9 weeks? No.
No,
Stopped. Okay.
everything stopped.
Got it. Okay.
So what did they find? Huge benefit cognitively to only the group that did the strength and the aerobic training. So global cognition, executive function, visual memory, verbal memory, and of course, increased balance, leg strength, endurance, right? The aerobic training alone benefited only in global cognition, but still a benefit, still beneficial to walk. And the social group alone, none of those.
Really?
So that was after 9 weeks. Then they went away. None of that stuff happened. They came back 9 weeks later. Everything reversed to baseline,
In all the groups?
as if none of that ever happened,
Oh, wow.
which I find fascinating.
Yeah.
There's a lot of takeaways from that.
Yeah.
One is the big one is you can't just do it for a few weeks and then, oh, I'm good. I see have my improvement and I'm good, because it all goes back to baseline.
Yeah.
So what does that tell us? That tells us this stuff needs to occur ongoing, consistently.
Yeah.
And not to say that the social visits aren't important, because we
Right.
know socialization is huge for wellness, but it
Yeah.
just didn't show up in this study. And the difference was the resistance training. And that's what I typically don't see. Not that I see everything when I go into these long-term care communities and into memory care to work one-on-one with my clients. But I do sometimes walk in and the activity director is leading activities, exercises with the community members. And I have not one time seen resistance training.
Yeah.
Could be I just didn't see it, but it's huge and it definitely needs to be added.
Yeah. I see chair yoga and I'm listening to you talk about this and I go, okay, chair yoga sounds really good, but it probably doesn't accomplish the resistance training unless it's done with weights or anything like that. And maybe I'm wrong in all of this, but it just sounds like it needs to be a much more robust program, maybe than what a lot of operators are doing.
Absolutely. So I do, yoga is wonderful and I'm sure it's very relaxing and it works on range of motion and mobility.
Yeah.
We do have to be careful with older adults. The statistics are 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men over 50 have osteoporosis.
Okay.
And they might not even know it. For my healthcare, I can't get the DEXA scan, which is how they find out
Yeah.
until I'm 65. What that means is when I work with older adults, I just assume everybody has low bone density and I avoid any movements that are contraindicated, meaning specifically rotation from the spine, lateral flexion from the spine. So there are a lot of movements that are done in yoga.
Yeah.
People just need to be aware of that.
Yeah. No, that makes so much sense. And like I said, not being a fitness person, right? That's not my world. A lot of the stuff you're talking about just is, the more I hear you say it, the more I'm like, that really actually makes sense when you think about it easily as like a layperson. So when we think about dementia, a lot of people talk about like using the Montessori method as part of their programming, their operators. That's their program is based on Montessori. But a lot of people don't necessarily think about it when it comes to exercise. And so I'm curious, like, how do you use the Montessori method in your work? How does that look in practice? Like, how do you execute that?
So I'd like to back up a little bit and tell you that my first career was as a Montessori preschool teacher.
Okay.
So I found it very fascinating because I left teaching. I went into fitness in 2003. And once I started working with people with dementia, I then learned that same Montessori philosophy that I had learned to work with the 2 to 5-year-olds was now being applied to working with people with dementia. And I was fascinated.
Yeah.
So I learned more about that. And once I started applying those principles to my fitness programs, the benefits just were so clear. Treating people with dignity and respect. And so what does that mean in a fitness setting? Maintain eye contact, say please and thank you. When I'm going to do anything, I tell them first, can you hold on to this chair? I'm going to put your ankle weights on. Can you hold on? I'm going to take your ankle weights off. It's just that whole respect. And also the whole time I'm looking for nonverbal cues from them. So they might not be able to verbalize something's going on. So I am like zoned in on them, just like I was zoned in on the little children.
Yeah.
We avoid frustration at all possible. So what does that mean? When I worked with little kids, if little Johnny took 30 minutes to put on his sweatpants, and then when he finally got them on, they were actually backwards or inside out, we didn't correct that because little Johnny, who's 2.5, got his pants on. And if I would have said, oh, no, you did that all wrong, let me do it for you. Is little Johnny going to put on his pants the next time by himself? Or is he going to sit there and say, why try? Can't do it properly. So in a fitness setting, as a trainer, we like feet straight ahead, knees in line with toes, hips in optimal alignment. Are we going to get that? No. But what we can do from a Montessori philosophy is we're going to set them up for success. So I have these little foot markers. So they come in different colors. So I put the foot markers down and say they're blue. And I'll say, Johnny's now 94. We'll give you Johnny. Johnny, step on the foot markers. So a lot of people, their feet turn out, one foot's going one way, the other foot's going the other way. That's an injury waiting to happen. But if we're constantly saying, put your feet straight, again, they're going to get frustrated and why try? Put the foot markers down, just step on the foot markers, those types of things. So we're using material to set them up for success. And then if I ask them to do marching and all of a sudden they're kicking their legs back, I don't say anything. They're moving.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to overly correct. We encourage independence as much as possible. So we don't do anything for them that they can do for themselves.
Okay.
And then, so if they can do something by themselves, stand up. But of course, I'm right there to
Yeah.
support them. And if they need a little cue, like they're trying to figure out where do I put this leg, I say put this leg. So I'm going to cue them along,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to pick them up unless they need
Yeah.
me to.
Got that visual where they can put their foot and all of that. So,
Yes.
yeah.
So I'm trying to set them up for success. We give choices, but choices within reason.
Yeah.
If you give somebody with dementia too many choices, they get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So for me, what does choices look like if we're going to do wall push-ups? Johnny, you want to do push-ups on this wall or this wall? That type of thing.
Yeah.
So you give them one or two options. And of course, if they don't feel like doing push-ups, then they're not
That's
doing
not gonna
push-ups.
work.
So those are some of examples of how we
Yeah.
apply the same Montessori principles that we did for young children to set people up with dementia for success in a fitness setting.
Yeah. You mentioned like just a second ago, like the wall push-ups, and maybe Johnny doesn't want to do them, right? Motivation when it comes to fitness and exercise. I know I struggle with getting motivated to do what I'm supposed to be doing. So I can only imagine how much more difficult somebody with some sort of cognitive impairment could be or to get that consistency. So do you have any go-to strategies that you use in your sessions to engage and get those people more motivated?
So there's lots of different things we could do. Music is key. Music can take them back to that long-term memory that they
Yeah.
have. And so that's a great way if somebody like me shows up because the care manager hired me to work with them because they've fallen a bunch of times. And most of the time they're good to exercise, but today is not such a good day. So music. But again, you need to know a little bit about them because the best music to play for them would be music from what they call their sticky years.
Yeah.
So the sticky years are between 15 and 25 where they form their musical preferences.
Yeah.
If you know that about them, you can use there's different apps I can refer to, or just say in general, find music that you know that they like. That's one of the questions in my life story. What type of music does
Yeah.
this person like? Let's just listen to some music and maybe sing along to some good old songs. And before you know it, they're smiling, they're moving, and then, okay,
You lean into
yes,
getting them
yes,
going. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, I love that. And you're so right about the music. We talk about like I do a dining with dementia workshop, and we talk about music and the environment and how that helps with all of that music. Just being in a dementia setting, I see how it can trigger those long-term memories and bring it all back. And obviously we've got a lot of operators that listen to the podcast. And so you don't just work individually, but you worked in communities and you've seen call them opportunities to be better. So when you are in those communities and those opportunities, what are some of those that you've seen that you think they can easily work towards improving?
absolutely. So even just little posture cues, because we know that postural deviation can cause a fall. They also cause a lot of pain. When somebody's hunched over this,
Yeah.
you got to believe they're in a lot of pain. It's not optimal alignment for them. And where we're leaning, that's where we're going, that type of thing. So even I teach people even little cues. Use little soft Pilates balls, blow them up, whatever. And even just putting a softball behind their head and just saying, can you just bring your head back to my ball?
Yeah.
You're not saying sit up straight. Can you imagine that there's a string on the top of your head that's lifting you up? Just little things even as you're just walking around and seeing people hunched up over,
Yeah.
putting a little softball behind their shoulder and saying, can you just push your shoulder back to my ball, and doing it on the other side. And now all of a sudden, or little cues like, can you show me a proud chest?
Yeah.
That type of thing. So just kind of being more proactive
Yeah.
versus waiting for that person to fall waiting to happen if they're walking like that. And then just even when they're sitting, they can do different ankle mobility exercises. So one of the things that happens as we get older is we lack dorsiflexion. That's the ability to bring the toes up towards the
Oh,
shin.
yeah.
And when we walk, ideally, if we're walking properly, we're doing the heel strike and then the toes. Heel toe.
Yeah.
But you'll notice if you start watching people walk, which that's an occupational hazard for a fitness professional because we watch everybody, people start to shuffle
Yeah.
or they're more on their toes, right?
Yeah.
So again, that's a fall waiting to happen. So even as they're just sitting around, oh, let's all tap our toes,
Yeah.
that type of thing. Just get those ankles rolling. Just any opportunity to, can we add a little movement before we start the movie?
Yeah.
That type of thing. Range of motion. Get the body just moving. That
Yeah.
type of thing.
Those all seem, when you take them one by one, they sound like such a small little thing that can't have an impact. But I go back to what you were talking about with the sensory connection, right? Have them put their head on a ball or their shoulder up against the wall or whatever. Stacking those little things on top of each other like that, I can see how, yeah, that can make a huge difference. And I love the example of, hey, we're getting ready to watch a movie. Let's do something really quick, 2 minutes while we're waiting for this thing to load up or whatever. I love all those examples. So as we wrap up here, I want to ask you, so for anybody, whether you're in a home setting or in a community setting, if you're caring for somebody with early stage dementia, what's maybe the one most impactful thing that they can do to really support independence and fall prevention? Something they could literally start right after listening to this podcast.
So I think I'll refer back to what I said at the very beginning. Look at the environment. Is there a lot of furniture everywhere and it's hard to navigate,
No.
right? Is there clutter that can be cleared? Are those beautiful area rugs around that don't have the sticky things on the bottom to keep them rugs, number one, tripping hazard, that type of thing?
Yeah.
How is the lighting in the room? Does the person have a flashlight by their bedstand so when they get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, they can light it up? That's one of the main times that people fall.
Yeah.
They get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, right? One of their senses is dulled, their vision, because it's dark, and they're more apt to fall. Those types of things. That would be, if I had to say one thing, that would be absolutely key. The other thing is movement is medicine. So any opportunity for movement, and again, not doing for them what they can do for themselves, even if they can just do a portion of it,
Yeah.
and then they need help with the rest, because you don't want the person to give up. I try, she'll do it for me, or he'll do it for me, or every time I do it, I mess up, so I'm not going to do it, that type of thing.
Yeah. No, great advice. Tell us a little bit about your website. You were telling me before we started recording about some of the videos you have. And so share with the audience how they can connect with you, learn more about your work, maybe reach out and have you work with them on some of this.
Okay, so I have two websites, and my main one it's called Deborah Does Fitness. And particularly for this audience, I have a video on demand subscription that I call Thrive. ToughAgers is my registered trademark. So it's ToughAgers Thrive. And for the first 7 days, it is free.
Okay.
So if somebody just wants to go on and watch all the videos and then unsubscribe, it will cost them nothing. And I highly encourage people to do that. So I have at this time, I have a lot of videos that are for the facilitator, whether that's the spouse or whether that's the care manager or somebody in the long-term care facility, not facility, community. We're not supposed to say that word anymore. I learned that this weekend.
Yeah.
That's very important. So they are showing how to help somebody do these types of exercises. And it covers everything from range of motion, mobility. I show different ways of teaching people to get onto and off of the floor safely. We do strength, we do coordination type exercises. And then I have two videos, one standing and one seated for those that need to be seated when they do low impact cardio. And that's directly to the person with mild cognitive impairment or dementia. So again, that's Deborah Does Fitness, and that's my Thrive group. I also have, because we know that the person taking care of the patient also needs to exercise, I have my ToughAgers 55 plus videos on demand. And I probably have about 100 videos there that they can just do at home. There's strength exercises, there's low impact cardio. So those are available. I also do Zoom personal training sessions. So if somebody is not in my area, we can set up Zoom sessions and do sessions like that. I also offer consultations to senior living communities and any other place that want to incorporate these types of things, and I show them how to do that.
Perfect. Deborah, thank you for taking time away from the conference and sitting down and sharing all of your expertise here on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed it.
So there it is, everybody. Another one in the books. Thanks again for tuning in. Please follow and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media at Tips from Trestle. You can also learn more about the work I do by following me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. And be sure to check out Trestle Hospitality Concepts at www.trestlehospitalityconcepts.com. I'm your host, Aaron Fish, and this has been another episode of Tips from Trestle.